Are you coming back to school with me? We could have done it all so easily.
Hi, my name is Craig Thompson Wood. I'm your host on Teaching with Board Games, here today to take a look at the Guess Who series of games. Now, while I don't actually have a physical copy of the Guess Who board game here with me, I have one at school, I do have a copy, a very well-loved copy of Guess Where. So this gives you an idea of the kinds of games I'm talking about, but this series of games where you and an opponent are trying to guess different things to guess who am I talking about, like who is the person that I have in a thing, or in this case, guessing where different family members are within the house. So let me just take you through. I mean, I think any of the games that you're going to be getting, whether it's Guess Who or Guess Where, would be very similar in what they're doing. So for this video, I'm just talking about all of the games in this series rather than just one of them. So let me just take you right to the report card. And for purposes of ease, I'm just going to call it Guess Who for the remainder of the video, just because it is the more popular game, and it's just going to drive me crazy if I keep having to think of what to call it. So for the number of players for Guess Who, I'm going to give it an A+, which may sound very odd based on the fact that Guess Who is a 1 versus 1 game. You're trying to guess which person you have as your secret person on your side, or maybe in Guess Where, you're trying to guess the locations of different family members in which rooms. But if you're using it in a classroom setting, it can be done in a more creative way that can really open it up to multiple players. So say, for example, I could be teaching my class with it, and I could be, having the secret person in my mind, and the class is asking me the questions, and I can say yes or no. So they can work as a team together, so all versus one kind of thing. I could do it in small groups where you have like maybe 2 sets of partners, and they can talk about with their partner, okay, what question should we be asking? Ask the question, process the answer, take the information, discuss, and then the other team takes their turn. Small groups, same idea. So I mean, this game is really only limited by your own imagination in terms of how are you going to conduct this game. What do you want to get out of it, and how are you going to do that? And there's just so many ways that can be done. It's so incredibly flexible in that way that it's a really useful tool in the classroom, and that's why I give it the A+ for number of players. For learning, I'm going to give the game an A. I give it the A because it's doing something in a really interesting, unique way that's going to be extremely helpful. Where I think Guess Who shines as a game is for use in teaching languages. Because, if we're just playing as a game where English language speakers are playing with English, asking English questions, it's very limited in terms of its learning capabilities, except maybe a little bit of critical thinking and knowing what kinds of questions to ask. But if I'm an English speaking person and I'm playing in French, suddenly now I have to know the kinds of questions that I need to ask, the words I need to ask, how am I phrasing those into sentences, real sentences, which are going to be asking real questions and taking the information that's given back to me in a real way that I can process it and understand how to use that to help me to win the game. By the same token, when somebody's asking me the question, I need to process their question, understand what they're asking, and be able to answer them back. So it's really getting this simple conversation pieces down and practicing them in a way that they start to understand it. To me, a lot of the learning that makes it so important is to be able to attach it to something concrete, to attach it to something tangible, to something real. And if you're just learning verbs and learning words without associating them with things, I mean, you can have anchor charts and things in the class. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can do these things. But to ask these kinds of questions, and just the repetition of asking the questions over and over again helps the practice. To be asking questions which have a meaning helps the practice. To be listening to questions which you then have to answer in that other language helps the practice. So while I'm talking about, like I mentioned this using as like in a French class, which is a very Canadian example, because in Canada our students from grades 4 on, unless you're in French immersion, are doing French. So they could be practicing these skills in a French class. But there's nothing to say that if you're a teacher, say overseas or somewhere, then you're doing an ESL class where you're teaching English language to other people, they could be playing in English. It's a really great way to concrete some very simple skills, some language skills and vocabulary in a fun way. So that's why I give it the A. For fun, I'm going to give the game a B+. I think the game is a really fun game, and it's one that the students always really enjoy playing. It gives them a chance to, they understand the purpose. They understand that it's educational, and they can see right through it. But I mean, the fact is, it's still a fun game. I remember playing this game a lot as a kid myself. I mean, it is that old, and I remember playing with other kids and stuff when I was working in childcare centers and stuff when I was younger. It's always been a fun game, and it's one that students have enjoyed even when they're not learning the language. So playing with English kids with the English rules was still fun. So doing it with the other language involved and learning that new language, it's still a fun game. So B+. For time, I'm going to give the game an A+, because again, depending on how you're playing it, I mean, there's different. If you have the actual physical game, then it's very quick and easy to set up. If you're playing with any resources that you can find online, it's even quicker and easier to set up. So in terms, whenever looking at the time, I always like to consider the cleanup and the setup of the game. So it's incredibly fast. And the game itself could really be over in 5 minutes if the people are good and asking the right kinds of questions, know what the kinds of questions to ask, and don't have to think about too much about the questions that they're asking, and are good with their vocabulary. Then it's going to be a very quick game, and one which you can play multiple times. In the examples I gave earlier about setting it up in the classroom and the teacher leading with the class asking the questions, that would maybe be the way I would set up the game in the first place. Introduce the game that way and have people do it that way. That's sort of the gradual release of responsibility, where you start off where the class is doing it all together, then into the small groups, and then into the one-on-one. So the students are moving more and more towards that, doing it on their own piece, and starting off in the first parts with the support of their classmates, and then moving to the more independent. So you can do that, and even all in one class, because it is so quick. So once you have the thing, you can even make it a little mini tournament. That actually might be kind of fun, where you start off with the class, teach the class how to play, you play as a class together, and then you put them into small groups, and then the groups start to, as the winners can go to play the winners, and eventually gets down to the individuals playing individuals, and you can go to a final round where the two people who've won all the way down the line play each other, and your ultimate winner for that day. That may take a little bit longer, but I mean, the idea being is that the games are so incredibly quick that you have a lot of options on how you want to do this. So definitely an A+ on time for me. For cost, I'm going to give the game an A+. Again, this game is great because, one, you can probably find it in a lot of the thrift stores. Two, if you don't find it in a thrift store, it's still going to be cheap to buy out of a store. And three, even if you're not buying out of a store, with a little bit of time and patience, you can look something up on the internet or make your own copies of the Guess Who boards by just putting up some random faces with some names underneath them. So it's really just a very low cost option for a very fun game that you could be playing with your students in the classroom. Definitely something I would recommend for anybody who's teaching any kind of language, whether you're a French teacher or, as I said, an ESL teacher. I would highly recommend this game for you in your classroom. And when I say game, of course, I'm talking about any other game. So again, like the Guess Who and the Guess Where, and any of the other Guess W's that you can think of. Guess Why, Guess What. I mean, if you can think of ways to incorporate those as well, asking different kinds of questions, then more power to you. And I'm sure if you look on the internet, there's probably examples of those kinds of things already out there. All right, so let me take you to the table, and I'll show you how this Guess Where game is played, because it's the less, to my experience, is the less well-known of the two games between Guess Who and Guess Where. So I'll show you how that one is played, and it gives you a sense of these games and how you might use them in your own language classrooms. So this is an example of a player board for the game Guess Where. Shows up here the characters that you're looking for. You're looking to find the positions of the dog, the sister, the grandma, the dad, mom, grandpa, brother, cat. And the characters can be in any one of these 6 rooms: the bedroom, the kids' room, the bathroom, the family room, the hall, and the kitchen. These ones are considered your upstairs and your downstairs. So at the start of the game, each player is going to put their things in. So maybe this character is going to put in mom here and grandma here. Now you can maybe just say you're going to be playing to find 5 characters or 3 characters, or the time limit, like how many characters can you find in the next 5 minutes. So there's a number of different ways that you could be playing this game. So maybe the kid's here in his room with the dog. And then the cat's in the family room. And grandpa's with the cat. All right, so I'm just putting those characters in there like so. Oh, sister. So each player is going to be putting the characters into the rooms to indicate where their positions are. So as the opponent is trying to guess, they can say yes or no. It's almost like Battleship. You know, are they in this spot, and you're trying to locate, but you're using logical deduction and asking questions to try to narrow your search. So as you are asking, then you're starting to make your deductions based on what the other person's telling. So when you're going through your questions, you might ask something like, say you're looking for grandpa. So I've got the grandpa piece here, and if I'm looking for grandpa, maybe you're only allowed to ask like yes, no questions. So I might say, is the grandpa upstairs? And on the other player looks at their board, which is going to be different from the way I've set up my board here. And maybe they say, yes, grandpa is upstairs. So I can maybe put grandpa, on the upper part here. So I know that grandpa's somewhere upstairs. So then they ask me their question and I answer it. Then they come back to me and so now I can come back to my question. Now, in the upstairs, I can maybe narrow it down again. So you see that the rooms on the sides here are much bigger. So I can maybe say, is grandpa in a big room? And if grandpa's not in a big room, then they'd say, no, he's not in a big room. Okay, so now I know that grandpa, if he's in a small room, there's only one small room. I know he's in the upstairs, and I know he's in a small room, so it has to be the kid's room. All right? And then when it's my turn again, I can say, is grandpa in the kid's room? Just to make that clarification of, yes, I've got that one right. And again, so you can play for a certain limit of like how many characters you're looking for, first to a certain number, or how many can you get in a certain time limit. Up to you how you play, but it's just really great way of just reinforcing some of those basic language skills. And this way you're parts of the house, but you can make your own board with different like geographical locations. The park, the zoo, the downtown, the school, the police station, all these different places that people might be needing to know the words for, and you can, like I say, create your own and have fun with it. Because it's just such an open-ended, flexible game. But that is how you play Guess Where. So that is it for the Guess Who Games series. I think that, like as I've been saying all along, that this is an absolutely amazing game series for teaching language, because it's one thing to learn the words and what the words mean and to be able to regurgitate a meaning of a word when asked, but to be able to put it into a sense, into a context of conversation where you're asking questions to try and get information, to process the information, to think about things that you're doing all of that in another language makes the whole idea of the language even more meaningful, more concrete, because now you're applying it to something real. So I absolutely love this game for that reason, and it's definitely one, like I know there are many teachers already using it, but in the interest of, sometimes people just haven't heard of it or whatever, and everybody hears something for the first time, so maybe I'm the first time you're hearing this idea, and if so, great. I'm glad I could be of help. If not, then well, maybe hopefully something that I said has been maybe different from your experience or given you some new ideas and ways that you can play it. Either way, thanks for watching. So if you are new to the channel, then what I'm doing is I'm putting out content on a weekly basis around topics of games and gamification. I'm talking about how to use games as educational tools in the classroom. Things like the Guess Who games. I also review other board games and topics, books, and topics of these things, just to how we can improve our pedagogy as teachers, as parents, as just educators. If this sounds good to you, then please do remember to hit like and subscribe down below, even the little bell icon, to be notified when I'm putting new content out, which, like I said, is on a weekly basis, sometimes even more than once a week. And subscribing to the channel really does help, and I really do appreciate it. And that is going to wrap it up for today's episode. Until next time, I am Craig Thompson Wood, your host on Teaching with Board Games, saying thanks for coming to the classroom.
Are you coming back to school with